resisted arrest. I arrived, a struggle ensued. He was transported to Shawnee Medical Center for examination and incarcerated in Lincoln County Jail, and that's all the police report says.
The current Cleveland County Jail opened its doors in 1934. In the past 50 years, there have been few changes. The facility has outdated cooking areas and cleaning areas. But most importantly, there's just not enough room. The jail was built to hold 30 prisoners. About 68 inmates a day are now housed. This chart shows a problem of overcrowding perfectly. In Cell B, there are 15 people being held on charges from assault and battery to murder. The detox tank, normally used to hold drunks, is being used to hold a juvenile charged with murder. So where are the drunks? They're being held here, in the kitchen. These will soon be problems of the past. A bond issue has been approved that will give Cleveland County a brand new jail. One with lots of space, including areas for maximum security, isolation, and protective custody. It's been a dream of Bill Porter's for years, and it's finally come true.
I started writing the commissioners back in '79 saying this was coming, and sure enough it arrived. But I'm real pleased with the citizens of Cleveland County that they got out and worked and voted the bond issue, and it'll be a savings to them down the line.
The new jail will be built here on the corner of Eufaula and Jones. This brick building will be torn down so that the facility can be constructed right next door to the old jail. Of course, it'll take time. It'll be about 2 years before the doors of the old jail are closed and the new ones are open. Sherry Sellers, Action 4 at the Cleveland County Jail.
Well, I'd like to say that I had this great idea. I think all adoptions must be handled either through a licensed adoption agency or by the state agency, which in our state is Department of Human Services.
Just because an agency is licensed and operating in the state of Oklahoma does not guarantee the morals and ethics of the people operating that agency.
Father's Day weekend was hard on about 20 people who live near Lake Konowa. All 20 became sick within a week after swimming in the lake's warm water. Doctors determined that the people were struck by a highly contagious disease called shigellosis. Concerned that more people might be stricken with diarrhea and vomiting, Oklahoma Gas and Electric, which owns the lake, banned all swimming until the source of the contamination could be found. State Health Department lab technicians tested numerous samples taken from Konawa Lake. They searched for telltale signs of the bacteria. Today, health officials released their findings.
We did a bacteriological analysis of the water, and it was all within normal limits. If there was contamination there and it was caused by human contamination, you know, the lake being too overcrowded and all that, we've certainly had enough time now where the level of bacteria would have dropped down and could drop down within normal limits. You know, it could have changed, yes, since that one particular weekend that we feel we had a problem.
OG&E will decide tomorrow whether to reopen Konawa Lake based on the Health Department investigation and its own findings. The Health Department is expected to find out exactly what caused the shigellosis outbreak sometime this weekend. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the State Health Department.
There was an ordinance passed several years ago that requires licensed insulation people, when they blow an attic, to place this 5-sided metal box over the heater or the light itself to keep the insulation away. The problem is for people who have insulated in past years, or perhaps who did it themselves, or for someone who isn't licensed, in other words, is what I'm saying, who may not be familiar with the law. And they do start fires because tremendous amounts of heat builds up underneath the insulation and around the light, several hundred degrees.
A group called Citizens for a Fair School Board have protested the firing of 6 school administrators who allegedly falsified expense reports. These people expect the administrators to win their termination hearings. Those hearings should take place during the next few weeks. Group members hold Superintendent Bob Spence responsible for the firings. They want Spence and the board members who support him to resign. There was a resignation last Friday, but it wasn't Spence. It was School Board President Don Ledbetter, Spence's only opponent on the board.
I must admit I was surprised and saddened. Don Ledbetter's a very intelligent man, a very thoughtful man, and he was willing to talk with the citizens down here. And we feel like we've lost a very definite line of communication to our school board with his resignation.
But school board member Barbara Thornton isn't unhappy about Ledbetter's resignation. Thornton said she's been friends with Ledbetter, but she isn't happy about some of the things he did.
Last week, he chose to ask Mr. Spence for his resignation without contacting any other school board members, and I was very angry with that, and I've told Dr. Ledbetter that I feel like, as president of the school board, he didn't have a right to do that without checking with other board members.
A school board meeting is scheduled here at the administration building a week from today. Thornton said she expects Ledbetter's resignation to be accepted, and she says the next school board president will be a strong supporter of Bob Spence. Bill Ross, Action 4, in Moore.
The insured depositors have no need to be concerned about their funds. They will be paid by the FDIC. They have no need to come into the bank to receive their funds. They may still continue to write checks on their checking accounts. If they do need to come into the bank, we will be there and we will have the money available for them at any time. If the initial demands for funds are heavy, if there are long lines of depositors, we will keep the bank open 24 hours a day if necessary in order to meet those demands.
The Vice President's plane touched down in the morning at Will Rogers World Airport. The Vice President finally coming to Oklahoma after canceling an earlier trip when the King of Saudi Arabia died. Bush brought his wife Barbara, and after a private reception, he headed for the Skirvin Plaza. There, he was greeted by over 200 people who had paid over $200 to hear him speak. It was not a rousing political speech, but rather an assessment of what his administration had accomplished compared to that of Jimmy Carter. 5th District Congressman Mickey Edwards, who's a candidate for re-election, introduced Bush, and afterwards Bush immediately talked about economics.
I respect him because he's the Vice President of the United States. I admire him because of his own activities, but ladies and gentlemen, I genuinely like him as a dear friend, the Vice President of the United States.
I want to talk about the good news, and I can tell you that recent economic indicators show that the recession has indeed bottomed out. Economic recovery is underway, and in our opinion, it is gaining momentum. The index of the leading indicators increased again in May, and it marked the 3rd straight month that the leading economic indicators were up, signaling an end to the recession.
Neither Bush nor Edwards ever mentioned the problems of Penn Square Bank, which would have raised some questions about economic recovery. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the Skirvin Plaza.
Security at Oklahoma City lake parks is a never-ending job since so many boat owners were complaining about vandals wrecking their boats. 14 part-time rangers will be hired for the summer to allow the full-time rangers to leave the station more and patrol the area. But this is still no guarantee the situation will get any better unless rangers receive citizen support.
The thing that would help most is if, there appears to be violations going on, or if there's a serious incident occurring, if they would report that immediately to us. We'll dispatch the closest either police unit or ranger unit to it, and hopefully working on a selective basis and a cooperative effort that between the police department and the rangers, we're going to be able to adequately serve the needs of the public.
Certain parks have been targeted as areas where extra patrolling units are needed. Besides using part-timers, more lighting will be added, and the police department will also aid the rangers in city parks. People have told city leaders they enjoy the parks and want the facilities to stay open, because a possible alternative was to cut down on the fun by closing the parks earlier. Ed Stewart, Action 4 at Stars and Stripes Park.
Today's heist was the third one in the past year for this savings and loan. As usual, the FBI was immediately called to the scene. Inside the building, each bank employee was meticulously questioned about the holdup. One man is believed to be the culprit. He took an undisclosed amount of cash. FBI agents noted subject descriptions as bank tellers described the robbers. Metro Police Lab technicians carefully dusted a rear entrance for telltale fingerprints. Today's hot, sticky weather should have provided a treasure trove of prints. Certain sets were singled out and carefully lifted from the glass. The FBI believes the man came to this back door asking for change earlier in the day. He came back later, around 1:30, brandishing a silver .45 caliber automatic. He left with the money and on foot. Federal officials have no new leads at this hour, and this the latest S&L holdup in Oklahoma City. Tony Stizza, Action 4 at Frontier Federal Savings and Loan.
It will affect quite a number of institutions. As far as I know, none will be affected so drastically as would cause their closing. But in many instances, the shareholders are going to have to come in with additional capital.
When Penn Square Bank's financial problems were made public, depositors wasted little time in trying to get their money out. Most people didn't have too many problems withdrawing their money because most of the bank's 26,000 customers had less than $100,000 in their account. One of the biggest accounts was Oklahoma City, with $3.2 million of city money in Penn Square Bank. Despite such a large amount, City Manager Scott Johnson says Oklahoma City won't lose a penny.
These certificates of deposit are backed by better than 100% collateral, and therefore the city will either get its money back, 100% of its money back, or it will get the securities that back that certificate of deposit in an amount equal to 100% of the money. Therefore, the city is not in a position to be hurt by that situation.
Johnson adds that the city is not losing faith in banks as a result of Penn Square. The city manager's only concern is how much red tape will there be before the money will be back in Oklahoma City's hands. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
Okay, who is the agent of it? Okay, what's his phone number?
Does he have the proper engineering? We'd look at the personal financial statement. We're very interested in the character of a borrower. I mean, that is very important to the relationship. And is it providing an economic need for the community or for the state? More importantly, if you do agree to make the loan, are there adequate sources of repayment in place to service the debt over a reasonable period of time?
The Institute will be located at San Anthony Hospital, but it will be a separate, non-profit organization. Here, emphasis will be placed on patient care, research, and the teaching of patient care. Dr. Hugh Wilson is on the board of directors, along with several other leading heart surgeons. So far, $5 million has been committed to the Institute, and he explains what it will mean to Oklahoma.
It's estimated that there are over 41 million people in the United States today living with some kind of heart or blood vessel disease. So there's a good deal of room for progress, and we want Oklahoma City to be in the center of it.
The new Heart Center will be open in March of '83, pulling medical talent from around the country. Internationally famous heart surgeons will perhaps one day perform here. When one considers San Anthony Hospital alone is projecting 700 open heart surgeries this year, one can easily understand why the surgeons got together and considered building such a facility. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at San Anthony Hospital.
Horses are big business in Oklahoma. In fact, the horse industry is promoted as the third largest in the Sooner State. September 21st, Oklahomans will go to the polls to decide whether or not they want parimutuel wagering. One well-known horseman says he doesn't know if it'll pass, but he does know other racing states will fight legalizing it here.
You'll find Ruidosa will fight it, Nebraska will fight it, they'll send money in here. What I've asked for this time is for everybody to disclose where their money comes from, you see. Now you're going to find out it's not the horsemen taking money from these underground sources. The underground sources are putting the money up for the opposition to fight parimutuel wagering in Oklahoma. And I've asked for a full disclosure of everybody, disclosing where their funds come from. Where do they get the money to buy a TV time from, you see? Well, we'll show where every penny of ours comes from and be glad to do it. Now let's let them start disclosing it.
And Robertson says the churches should take a good look at their new members who contribute money to fight the issue. The horseman feels the state will be much better off financially if it's passed. Tomorrow, we'll talk to Ross McClennon of the Sooner Alcohol, Narcotics, and Education Association. He'll tell us why he's battling the passage of parimutuel wagering. Ben McCain, Action 4.
There they go.
September 21st, we'll get the chance to go to the polls to vote for or against parimutuel betting in Oklahoma. At the present time, the majority of Oklahoma horsemen take their better horses out of state. The horse industry would love to see parimutuel here, but Ross McClennon and other members of the Sooner Alcohol Narcotics Education Association are working to keep it out.
So many people seem to think that it's going to be a bonanza to Oklahoma for the economics, that it's going to be as one of their speakers has said on radio, that it's going to keep the bookies out of Oklahoma. And exactly the opposite is true. You don't legalize something such as gambling and then keep out the criminal element, the bookies, the syndicates.
McClennon says he's got studies to prove what he's saying is true. Horsemen, on the other hand, feel parimutuel betting will be of great economic benefit to the state of Oklahoma. It's going to be an interesting race. Ben McCain, Action 4.
Egrets and herons like to live in areas surrounded by people. Having people nearby helps keep predators away. This colony of egrets has been coming to Oklahoma City for decades, perhaps centuries, to hatch and raise their young. Growth of the city has forced them to move several times, and this year they settled near Council Road and Northwest 30th, willing to coexist with their neighbors. But the neighbors would rather not coexist with them. The noise and the smell of the colony of birds has turned a quiet neighborhood into a nightmare for some residents. The Oklahoma City Zoo has stepped in to begin to try to relocate the colony on zoo property, where they can be protected from further city growth.
More than anything, it's a temporary nuisance for 2.5, 3 months out of the year because, quite honestly, there is a noise problem there. It's 4 in the morning and they'll start vocalizing, and if you're trying to sleep, I imagine that would be difficult. But there are people that choose to live next to airports and other man-made things, and they're not interested in moving the man-made nuisances, but since it's nature, they're interested in doing something about it.
The relocation could take several years, but in the meantime, the egrets and their roost are protected by the federal government, as long as they want to stay where they are. In another month, the colony will probably migrate to South America, but next year, most of the egrets will surely return to this spot, unless further city growth destroys their roost. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4.
From Oologah, Oklahoma. I wonder if that was for Kelly or Oologah. These Oologah firms, Oologah Kiwanis Club, Lake Mountain, and Atlanta, Georgia, Miss Lisa Swafford, your Miss Lakeside State Bank, and Fast Crane Service in Bakersfield, California. She would like to be totally committed to God's plan for her life and be a vessel through which His love can pour. Number 2.
Governor George Nigh may have been informed of the questionable purchasing practices of the Department of Human Services. A story in today's Muskogee Phoenix and Times-Democrat say the Board of Public Affairs detected irregularities in Director Lloyd Rader's purchase of equipment from the H&C Equipment Company in Hinton. In the letters between the board and Rader, administrators complained that Rader was breaking state bidding and contract laws. The governor was designated to receive copies of all the correspondence between Rader and the state board. Governor George Nigh is still unavailable for comment until he has time to review the letters. Kurt Autry, Action 4.
The victim was welding on this 1,000-gallon diesel fuel tank when the tank exploded. The lid blew off and threw the victim inside the tank. Fire Chief Fred Collins says it was a freak accident.
They filled it up yesterday with 1,000 gallons of diesel, and the welder was welding on the opposite end of the tank, was welding a ladder to the end of the tank.
The victim was taken to South Community Hospital with first-degree burns on his neck and back. He is listed in stable condition. Debbie Mash, Action 4 in South Oklahoma City.
The Southwest Community Action Center is one of 12 places around the city where senior citizens can escape the heat this summer. They offer classes and companionship, but they also offer a cooler spot to relax and reflect. Even with hopes for the future, there is need for caution today. Summer heat can be dangerous, especially to the elderly and especially when the humidity is high. But the community action centers and places like them are about all that is being done for the elderly this year in Oklahoma City. In the past, aids like fans were provided, but this year, the money isn't available.
But all of these cuts filter down. It's just like everything. It starts at the top and comes down, and so every time anybody has to pick up some money that the federal government has been taking care of, it pulls money from another program or makes it more difficult to continue.
While the elderly are at the centers or other cool spots, they're fine, and Community Action is trying to instruct them on what to do on their own to prevent heat stroke or other serious problems. In the meantime, they hope for a mild summer and volunteers and donations to expand their work. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4 at the Southwest Community Action Center.
Under the new name of Northwest Tower, construction on the high-rise continues to move along at a brisk pace, despite the fact the building's anchor tenant was liquidated almost 3 weeks ago. But today there was a minor setback. The boom on one of the cranes lifting steel girders to the top of the building buckled, causing a piece of the crane to drop almost 4 stories. No one was injured in the incident. Construction engineers are still trying to determine what caused the accident. When construction first started on the building, 100% of the office space available was already leased, with the Penn Square Bank taking up the first 6.5 stories. Today, the tower has a 2/3 occupancy rate, and the company managing the property says they should have no trouble finding more tenants.
We're very confident about leasing up the remaining 33%. A number of people have already contacted us, and there's a very large interest in becoming a part of this building.
Developer of the project, Burke Incorporated, say they're not experiencing any problem with their former association with the defunct Penn Square Bank. Their main concern is just finishing the building. Kurt Autry, Action 4.
HBO is your 24-hour ticket to the best entertainment in July with great movies.
About 50,000 homes in Oklahoma City enjoy movie channels like this one through Cox Cable. Customers can buy just the one movie service or for an extra fee get several others. 9% of the subscribers only have the basic channel. Now there's nothing wrong with that, except a good majority of these people bought it because they know how to rig in the others for free. It's all done through the cable box on the television. On your left is the old box, which most people still have. But soon subscribers will have the box on the right, which is new and modified. It's much harder to get into, and if tampered with, will automatically cut off the system. Cox Cable hopes the new box and the $100 reinstallation fine will deter freeloaders. But the company's general manager says it won't bring a permanent end to the problem.
Obviously, we're in an electronic age, and there are many people who have access to electronic magazines and books, and it's a matter of time before someone generally discovers the latest method to beat the system. So we hope that this will stop it, but I doubt seriously if it'll stop it totally.
For those people who bought only one channel and haven't rigged in the others, here's a bonus. The new box will give you better reception. Sherry Sellers, Action 4.